Welcome, friends, to the Soul Talk podcast, a show where we explore and uncover the path to the heart, amplifying your conscience. Join me as we meet incredible souls who are in this journey and learn from their experience and different methods that will make you vibrate your heart. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. This is Monica Ramirez, the Warrioroflove, and thank you for being back here in Soul Talk and in Zoology at the same time. And today we have a beautiful human being that I had the pleasure to meet her in Sedona in person. And oh my God, she's just amazing in every single way. I hope you can feel this just through this interaction in video, because in person you can feel her energy. And her name is Lori Lipten, and she is going to tell you a little bit about who she is, because it is very, very interesting. What does she do? And I bet you want to take some classes from her.
Well,
Lori.
thank you, Monica. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm so delighted that our paths crossed again in Sedona. I felt as soon as it's going to make me emotional. As soon as I met you, I felt like I had met a long lost friend. And so I feel absolutely honored to be here. And let me just share, I guess, a little bit about what I do and how I show up in the world. I've always been intuitive, and I think many of your listeners might be relating to that feeling of being intuitive and not really knowing what to do with it or how do I expand it. And I went through a series of kind of awakenings and pretty profound encounters with spirit that sort of, changed the way that I see things and the way that I show up in the world. And ultimately, how I serve clients is by offering mediumship connections. So people come to me to connect with loved ones who are crossed over, who are in spirit. But the reason I call myself a shamanic medium is because, one, that's what my helping spirits call me. And mostly it's because my focus is on healing. So often in the world of mediumship, the term is called evidential medium. And I do work as an evidential medium. In other words, bringing evidence in from the world of spirit, so you know with whom I'm speaking. But my focus is always working through what's called the Akashic records, which you're familiar with, the soul records, to provide some kind of reconciliation, healing that spirit is seeking to experience for themselves and also for the living. And I also tend to, so I do that. That's something that I'm known for, and I've been doing for over 20 years now professionally. I started as a psychologist, but every time I would meet with my clients, I could see loved ones, I could see what was going on in their energy field. And I kept having this conflict of how I was trained versus what I was experiencing intuitively. And I finally kind of crossed that bridge and merged the world. So I use my psychology background in what I do to serve my clients and to promote healing. But I really do live and work in that intuitive shamanic way. And I also work shamanically by collaborating with helping spirits to provide healing, not just through mediumship, but through soul retrieval, which is something that you are interested in, which is a very specific type of shamanic healing. And I'm not sure if you want me to say more about what it is, or I could keep talking.
Yes, I do. I feel that every single person, they have their own signature to do things, even when
Right. It's true.
and we have our own medicine in a way when we're doing it.
Yes. Yes.
And that doesn't put anyone lesser or more. It's just different. It's like
Exactly
cooking.
right.
It's
Right.
cooking. Everybody has their own seasoning.
That's right. Or exactly right. Or singing. I always like to say, everybody has different style of singing, right? And we all come with these gifts, and some of us are born with, I think everybody is born with sacred medicine in them, by the way. It doesn't mean that everybody works in a shamanic way, but everybody has something special or something that they can use to heal the world, to make the world a better place, to pave the way. And I love teaching students and helping them awaken to that. And soul retrieval is something that came about for me actually unexpectedly. I have a background in working in trauma as a psychotherapist. And even before I ended up with my graduate degree, I volunteered in a center for dealing with people who are trauma survivors. So I was trained in a very specific approach of helping people who had trauma. And then one day I was doing a reading where someone had had a psychotic break, and the family came to me and asked for support and asked me if there was something that I could do. And so I very tentatively went in and asked into the Akashic realm and asked my guides, my helping spirits, asked the divine, if you will, to show me what this individual would need and to help him process through this psychotic break. And I was told that he had had soul loss, that his soul fragmented from a trauma. I was shocked. I didn't even understand what that could mean. And I was shown clairvoyantly that his soul had fragmented and it was sort of stuck or stationed, if you will, in another dimension, and that it needed a soul retriever or a shaman to bring the soul parts back to do the healing. And then my guides turned to me and said, just like you, Lori, it's like, what? I didn't even know what soul loss was, what a soul retrieval was. And so out of responsibility, I said, hey, let me do some research. Let me find out. I ultimately Googled, is there such a thing as soul retrieval? And I found out that it was the oldest healing path in the world. It's sacred medicine. And so I was struck by that and immediately went to study. And my guides taught me how to do soul retrieval. And then I went to study with a shaman, and she taught me very similarly to what my guides taught me. And then I ended up apprenticing with a shaman and working with her. I apprenticed with two different shamans from different backgrounds. One was a Celtic shaman and one was a Lakota shaman. And my heritage includes being Cherokee in this body, in this lifetime. And so I feel I want to say that I feel very reverent of people who walk into worlds and who are indigenous, because the word shaman, it's not a Native American term, but it can be misunderstood or thought that it's only for Native American. Every indigenous culture has shaman or medicine people in them. They may call them different things. And right, yeah.
Just to get it back, because many people have these conceptions about shamans.
Yes.
And I would believe before even we jump into go back to that, let's clarify what is shaman, because there is right now a lot of confusion. I have met people that they claim they're shamans, and as soon as you meet them, it's like, oh no, they're no, I don't even think they're being close to one.
Right.
So let's clarify that first, because right now there is a lot of confusion and a lot of charlatans in this area.
It's true. And even for me to use the term, I think you know this about me already, that it makes me a little uncomfortable. And there's a couple of reasons why. My understanding of the term shaman, what it means, it comes from the Tungus tribe. It's a Siberian word, and it means a person who either walks into worlds or a person who sees with the heart. And my guides, I had a dream when I was in my 20s that were a Native American guide, or I didn't even know I had guides yet at that time, but this beautiful man called me a shaman, and I thought, what? That's a holy person. How could I ever be that? And so I'm not here to claim that I'm a shaman. I'm here to say I work in a shamanic way, it's really up to, whether that serves, whether that works, whether that brings healing to others, for them to say whether that's how they experience me or not. So it's really taking, I feel, for me, it's the ethical responsibility associated with walking into worlds, which means for me, living with integrity as I walk in the world, the material world, and that which is the world of spirit, and collaborating with that world to serve the highest good of those in the, in all worlds, really, if that makes sense.
Thing that I would like to add to that, that's something that my guide's been insisting in this about shamans. It is you work with nature and the
Big,
elements, because not every single person that work with spirit and they do work with the elements or with the energy of the planet of Gaia.
right, right.
And shamans, that's something that they have in common too.
That's right. And they use their natural resources, they with great respect, because as I understand it, it's the trees or the plants or the elements that will talk to that person that and say, this is how you can work with me. We can work together so we can serve the highest good of the client, of the person that's in need. And yeah, absolutely, that's a significant component to it. And it's a walk that, people who are shamanic, as I understand it, also usually have gone through a crisis that awakens them. So it's not something that you just take a class and become that. It's really how you've dealt with your own crisis, the medicine that you birth from that crisis becomes how you serve and support others.
In a way, it's like a rite of passage
Yes.
to something. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's a rite of passage.
Yes.
And that's what
And usually most of us who have had that went through a very dark phase to get to that awakening, get to that space where we feel like, okay, oh, that's how I got here. And spirit is who helped us get wherever we are, right? So I owe everything to spirit, to the great mystery that we live in. So when it comes to trauma, one of the things that happens with trauma is that we can disassociate, we can disconnect. And so that's a psychological term, but shamans have known that forever. Soul retrieval has been practiced on every continent that's inhabited for more than 60,000 years. It's remarkable to me. I was blown away by that, right? And so soul retrieval is when someone, an intermediary like you, Monica, or I, or someone who does soul retrieval work, goes into what we call a trance state, or a deep theta consciousness, this deep theta awareness. And theta is when the brain waves slow down enough that it appears that the practitioner, the retriever, is in a trance, right? And typically the way that I was trained, you can go there at will, but you use music, a drum or rattle or some kind of sound, a sonic driver, to help you get there. And during that time, you go in to retrieve the soul parts from wherever it might be, which means the energy or the essence of the individual that's stuck in time, that's been lost due to the trauma. So let's say a person has a car accident, they've been traumatized, they're shocked, they lose memory, they lose a sensation. The shaman would then go into the retrieval to bring back the soul part and heal it. They work with helping spirits, divine helpers, benevolent helpers, to do healing on that energy and then bring it back to the individual so that they can walk in the world and then do what they need to do to integrate that healed energy. And it's like getting your empty cup full. Yeah, sorry.
That's something that I right now I'm just remembering about that knowledge. In Mexico, I was raised in Mexico, I'm Mexican. And my grandmothers used to tell me, okay, when you got really scared, you have to go. But then they were talking about going physically to the place where
Yes,
that happened, so you can bring that part of you and call it back to you.
that's correct.
And that's in every single culture. And even there now, there are modalities like NLP,
Yes,
in a theta level with their voice, like hypnosis, to bring you back to that
that's right.
moment, to bring back those soul parts.
That's exactly right. And in psychotherapy, there's other interventions that people use that are similar. I do a lot of inner child work, and there's times that you can bring back the voice of the inner child or reparent the inner child. This would all be kind of a soul retriever. And soul retrievers work differently, just like you said, like in your, in Mexico where you were shown where you go back to the place. I've done that with people as well. But I tend to work because of the background that I have as a psychotherapist. I tend to work in a way where I tend to go into shamanic journey and retrieve the parts and then give them, return them to the person, and then guide them on how to integrate that energy so that they can move forward.
Something
Yes.
that it brought my attention a while back when I was doing one soul retrieval. It was I was trying to make this arrangement with the soul, the pieces of soul to come back to the person, and they didn't want to come back.
Back. That's very
Yes,
common.
yes, because it was like, no, you have betrayed me before, so I don't
That's
want
right.
to.
Right.
So that's when you have to make actually arrangements with the person. It's like, and you promise to your own self that you're
That's
not going to
right.
betray yourself, or you're going to honor yourself, or things like that. Can you talk more about that? Because
I
I think
can, because there's a couple of things. It's soul retrieval requires a responsibility on the part of the individual who's receiving the healing, right? And one of them is exactly what you're describing. A soul part will not return to an unsafe space. It left because it felt unsafe. And it may not be anything that you did, it may be what was done to you. But if you aren't able, if you've adapted to the soul loss by drinking or doing things or talking to yourself negatively, then you're going to have to learn how to take really good care of yourself now. And here's the thing, when the energy does return to you, it's like you have the ability to act for yourself in a way that maybe eluded you before. And you're right, one of the parts of the, so part of it is educating the individual that they have a responsibility, a role to take in their own healing and relearning. And that's where support can make a big difference. Either working with someone like you, who's a coach that could guide someone, or working with a psychotherapist if that's more what's happening. They can continue to have support to integrate that energy. One of the things that happens when I'm doing a soul retrieval is sometimes I have to convince the soul part, hey, you've grown up now, or the situation has changed and you're going to be in really good care. But you are right, Monica, that soul part will look at me if it's a little one or whatever and say, please, you have to reassure me that it's truly safe. And that person has to really create a new environment for them. And
yes,
that's part of our healing journey, right? Is learning how to do it differently than what was done to us.
that's something that I've been noticing more with the healers. A lot of them, they have different modalities. They teach them how to heal with their hands or whatever it is, and the next week they have the same client the next week, and the
Yes,
next week, and so forth forever. Why? Because even if they can heal the body in that moment and they go back to their home, to the same habits, to the same
right,
attitudes, the same
right.
ways, they go back again with the same issue.
That's right.
And a lot of of the modalities, they're not trained to work with people.
That's right. In that way, to integrate the new steps, the new practices, right? And I do believe we need to be kind and compassionate with people who, find that difficult. so that they don't feel alone. Like we don't just give someone back their energy or do a healing and then go, good luck. Part of my work is to say, help somebody navigate that change and make the changes either in their thinking or their habits, to be kind to themselves. There are tools that people need in order to be able to do that properly. And typically when I do a soul retrieval, I'll receive guidance for my client on how to move forward, how to serve this energy so that they can heal. And they'll get different tools depending on what's needed for that. For some people, it's lifelong trauma. For some people, it's one traumatic incident. So it can, soul retrieval can apply on different levels, and different degrees of investment are required.
Lori, I know there's not many female shamans. I know there's the grandmothers and so forth, but at the same time, it is not so known.
I know.
Even the powerful grandmothers, that they're females, obviously, and the male shamans.
Yes.
Why is that separation between genders so deep into the shamanism?
I think that if I'm understanding your question, Monica, and you tell me, I think that part of that is forgive me if it sounds overused, that patriarchal culture that we've been, that's sort of, it's been woven into all of the systems, even though shamanic cultures were not necessarily patriarchal. They were somewhat, not to the same extent as the West, but they've all been influenced by that. Now, I've been to places like the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, and when I was there, my helping spirits told me that there were more medicine women from that region than any other place in the world. I thought that was fascinating. So there's females there, and also when I was in Chile, I noticed that there were more female shamans that I spoke with. But you're right, it's not as common. But I do know that because of what's happening, the ascension path that's happening on the earth, more women are waking up and stepping into that rightful power and showing up. Now, I think it's really interesting. I don't know if it's true for you. When I look at my past lives, and I know that might be, an interesting thing to talk about, right? Because sometimes when I do soul retrieval, I retrieve from past lives too. I've been male more than I've been female. And I think it's because I've come in to do shamanic or types of healing. And in the male body, you could have more power. You could be seen. You could show up that way. And in this lifetime, I'm like the, total like Western, look at me, blonde, fair skin. And so I think it's fascinating that I picked this body in this lifetime. And I trust it. I always knew that since I was little, that even my last life, I knew that I had been male with browner skin, and I loved it. And I think in this lifetime, I'm here kind of to reach people and help women stand in their power and reclaim that medicine and bring it back into balance, what's been out of balance, which is sort of the male dominant way of approaching healing. And now the feminine, and the grandmothers are all for it. They are so excited to see so many women waking up and owning their power.
Hi everyone, this is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love. And if you have been feeling stuck where you are right now, or if you have felt that you cannot connect with others in the same language or the same emotions that you're feeling, if you're a coach, a healer, energy worker in any of those branches, maybe this is for you. Because we have felt the disconnection for the rest of our family, friends, that we cannot connect to them. And we're so afraid to actually go deep dive when we're getting triggered by our own clients, because we're seeing our mirror image with them. My name is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love, and that's my spiritual name. And I take clients from feeling confused and feeling stuck to feeling free, to feeling that they feel empowered from themselves. I created a system, Path to the Heart, that goes in 3 levels. And the first level, it is healing the inner child, healing the parts of us that we've been so afraid, or it's very painful to do it. I have done it myself, not only with me, and I have done it with many, many of my clients, that I take them to this process. The second level, it is to go more into inner self, clearing the family lineage, to breaking the contracts and vows, learning deeper more about the laws of the universe. And the third level, it is learning how to channel, how to do waking up your and getting online your gifts, your unique gifts that the world so much needs right now. So if you wanted to know more about this, I am eager to show you and to teach you all what I know that I use every day in my life. So thank you for being here in this page. I really appreciate it. And this is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love. Please, can we talk about the grandmothers? Because I believe this is a very important topic, and there's not too much outside knowledge. I mean, when I turned 52 years old, I started searching because I know in the Mexicas, turning 52, and you're ready after your menopause and so forth to become the grandmother.
Yes,
And
to become an elder. Yeah.
I started searching for that information everywhere, and there's not much information about it. I just
No,
heard it from my guides, and it's like, I
me
cannot find
too.
more information, and I couldn't find it. Please.
So I love hearing you talk about it because I'll be honest with you, I think you're one of the few people I know that speaks of it. And I meet them when I go in a shamanic journey or I enter into, non-ordinary reality. The grandmothers work with me along with my other helping guides. And the ones that I have seen, they call themselves the grandmothers of the sacred hoop. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term. That's a Lakota term. I believe it's what Black Elk use. All it means is the infinite connection between us all. The sacred hoop is the infinite between all worlds, all beings. I'm getting chills everywhere. I'm getting them all over. And the grandmothers are like as I understand, these are the ancestors, the wise ones, the medicine women that carry the sacred wisdom and healing. I have chills and gifts that they support all people, but they are also helping women return to balance. And they're very devoted to the earth and seeing us live in harmony with Mother Earth and the divine feminine. That's my understanding of them. They're carriers of peace. They're interested in peace and harmony with all beings everywhere.
Something that because I lack of information, even in Google, about it.
I
I've
don't
been
think there's anything in Google, is there?
No,
Yeah.
it's almost none. And I
Yeah.
searched for the Mexica culture because that's where like I heard it the first time, and it's like, okay, I need to find it, and I could not find it. So I started asking my guides, okay, give me more information about it. And something that they were telling me that basically that what happened is women after the menopause, after they turn 52, because that's when they change to the Maya calendar.
Right.
And, and then I started realizing that yes, that we go in our needs and wants change.
Yes.
We're looking for a legacy. What are we gonna leave? We're not more into let me have kids, because we're not interested in that anymore.
That's
We're
correct.
interested, our views or wants are very, very different than before, when we have our period,
That's right.
our menstruation. And now we feel more open about it to be completely us, and we embody more us,
Yes.
more than when we were younger. And we we don't care much about what other people will think or not think, or things like that. It's a very different point of view.
It's an extremely powerful one because women have been, no matter what culture, indoctrinated in the culture. And it's sort of like when you hit what you're using, the, you know, the age, the 52, 53, depending on what nation you speak with, but that's when you become what they call the elder. And it's my language, my understanding with a grandmother. And the grandmother is interested in understands that what we do can impact 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. And so before you are a grandmother, you're thinking about this generation, you're thinking about the kids you're raising, you're thinking about who you are, and you're doing your best to own yourself. But by the time you hit this point, your focus is on embodying that wisdom. And what does that mean? What can I do? Like, I love the way you said it. What legacy can I leave? That's in my heart all the time. I want to leave a legacy of light. So how do I leave that legacy of light? What can I do using the gifts that have been given to me in the highest and best good for all? And that's my question every day. What would you have me do with this today? How would you have me serve? And I think that being a grandmother, you know, or being, you know, I'm not yet a grandma, I'm not at that point, but I am in that eldership stage. And so that's a different level of responsibility spiritually and a different level of purpose. And these grandmothers that are in spirit are eager to work with the women that are willing to step into that eldership role, that level of leaving a legacy or healing for the earth, so that the earth is healthy, our children are healthy, their children, and so on. And when we do that, we help heal our ancestors. And that's a gift we give to them.
Yes, it is. It is fascinating how even in Google we cannot find as much information as we're looking for a shaman, a male shaman.
Yeah, I think you're so right. And I do notice that that's who gets the recognition. So maybe that's something you and I can address and write about together. Do some research. That would be incredible.
Because yes, it's a very different, the female and the male energy that we're embodying in this life.
Yes.
Because yes, we were males in different lives, and probably shamans males or different things. I do have remember many lives.
Yes.
But in this one, we decided to come as a female. We decided to do this kind of work. So it is something that it is not so much known.
No.
I know that in the Tolzin that it is from the Mexicas.
Yes.
It comes this information, but I could not find it in Google. And I was like, oh wow, this is ridiculous. There's
so much. I haven't been able to find much about it anywhere. It's only been through my own connection with spirit, and then speaking to other shamans around the world, especially females. They seem to be in touch with that and aware of it too. But you're right, there isn't much written, but there isn't a lot written. So shamanic cultures were not written cultures. They weren't, you know, that history has been oral tradition. Yes. So that's been interesting too. And because, you know, when the West is influencing the shamanic cultures, I mean, there's some amazing things about shamanic cultures, depending on where you go, where a lot of shamans dress both male and female and embody both the male and female. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. I can't think of what it's called right now. It's escaping me. But because they're supposed to represent to the community both sides, both aspects, and, you know, to bring some balance to that for the community.
Because in a way, yes, you're totally right. When you're a grandmother or one of the grandmothers, you're not much into the competition, like when you were younger female, but neither with the men at the same time. You just embody your own power.
That's right. And you get to a point where you no longer care what other people think. You have to be authentic. You have to live your truth. And that's become increasingly important for me in this life. I've had to live authentically. And when you hit a certain age, it's like, it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. I'm showing up. This is who I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really important, isn't it? And women need to know that. And we need other women to show us the way. We need, it's why I teach, because I needed teachers, and I found it very hard to find, only found male teachers, and I looked for female shamans to study with because I wanted to know how they lived, how they were working, especially at the time when I began, because I had a little daughter and I wanted to know, how am I going to do this? How am I going to balance this? And it was very helpful for me to meet with female shamans as a result.
I believe one of the more famous shamans in the United States, that she's very elderly now, Sandra Ingerman.
Yes, I studied with Sandra.
Yeah.
So she was my teacher, one of my teachers. And then I studied with another, Colleen Dietzman, who was more of a Celtic shaman and taught me Celtic, which is a really different and fabulous art and medicine way as well.
What is the difference between the Native American and the Celtic?
It's really it brings more of the Gaelic and Celtic traditions. So one of the things about shamanism is that, like you were saying, how shamans work with nature, right? So they use whatever's in what's indigenous to their land. So their trees, their plants, their medicine, and they also incorporate whatever their cultures are. So it's like, celebrating the Day of the Dead, for example, in Mexico, it really is a shamanic tradition, right? It's woven into the tradition. Well, the Celtics do the same thing, using Yule as a holiday, or different kinds of, I'm thinking it's been a while, like different kinds of medicine bags, or prayer ties that you would use whatever was indigenous to Ireland or Northern Scotland. And I was drawn to that because that's also in my heritage. So I was fascinated by that, like that I had the Cherokee, but I also had this. And I wanted to learn, like, what were the different kinds of symbols they use. They like ruins, that's really Norwegian, and some other practices. But ultimately, what's happened for me, even though I studied with these teachers, and wonderful, beautiful teachers, I love them, I've had to come up with my own approaches, my own medicine, my own path. Does that make sense? So,
Yeah.
and that's part of, I think, eldership too, for me, is that for a long time I was doing exactly what my teachers taught me, and out of respect and reverence, I will always hold them in the highest reverence. And then it became my own way, my own unique, heritage, and my own unique, and the way my guides have taught me. And that's really how I practice today.
I'm wondering right now, it just occurred to me, how many people or women that you exist that they're not too much into the shamanism because
Right.
it was not available where
Yeah.
they were. But when they're doing a healing to Reiki, to whatever modality they have, they're doing in a shamanistic way.
Yes. So I teach a program, and I called it, my guides asked me to teach it. They're the ones who gave me all the content for it. It's called the Intuitive Practitioner Certification Program, right? I teach it every year. It's a 10-month program. I teach people how to do shamanic journeying, but it's not just a shamanic thing. I teach people how to read Akashic records and how to do energy healing. And some people, what I've noticed, some of my students wake up to that shamanic gift inside them. So you're right. Some people maybe aren't that. They're a light worker and they're working in a different way, but they don't come to it because they're interested in shamanism. They're not thinking like that. But I've just seen how they work in that deeper trance state, how they confer with their helping spirits, the medicine that they carry gets awoken in them, and then they are working in a shamanic way. And I don't think it matters whether they ever call themselves that or not. If they're a healer, if that's who they are, that's the medicine they carry. That's the gift that they bring.
And me, I did not know I was carrying that kind of medicine until I started working with one of my beautiful teachers in New Zealand.
Beautiful.
And then when she was doing, she was gonna do a healing for me. She told me, "Oh, there is a shaman male here telling me that I need to ask permission." And in that moment, it says, "Okay, yes, you have permission." But I connected with him,
Yes.
and I believe he was one of my past lives.
Me
And
too.
and that's when we start connecting more, and that's when I start learning more. And that's when it's like I realized, oh, my grandmother used to do this and this and this, and my great grandmother used to do this and this. Like, oh, it's the same thing. And
Yes.
that's when I start connecting more with my own medicine from past lives as a shaman.
Yes. I had a similar experience, and it was my helping spirit, was my guide, who was Lakota, and I was like, he was teaching me, and I didn't know, I didn't think of myself that way. It was just like, that's a holy person. I can't possibly be like that. You know, I couldn't even relate to it. But I was learning and practicing and doing the things that he taught me, and it built a bond, and it helped me. And I realized I've known you in a past life. I've lived that life before. I have chills, and you're reminding me, you're helping me remember. Oh my gosh, I can feel him right now saying it, like, yes, yes, yes. Which is how I feel when I saw you. Like, it's just recognizing, first of all, it's not a specialness, it's just a different way of showing up in the world, right? And integrating and living in that world. But when I saw you, I was like, oh, I know you. You're a sister of mine. Chills. This is a soul sister walking in this world in a shamanic way. I didn't know if you called yourself that. I didn't know that's how you work. It just cracks me up that when I hear you even talk, I think, oh my God, we see the same things. It's like amazing. So yeah.
I have many modalities, but shamanism is not one of them. Now I'm starting to study it.
Embody it. Yeah.
But every time I do healings, every time I do, it just show up. Every
Yes.
time I do, even I learned the soul retrieval through NLP,
Yeah.
but when I do it, to know that was a shamanic one, and it's like, okay. The other day I bought finally a drum, and it's like,
Yes.
okay, I need to start working with the drum. I understand that that take me to a theta level and so forth, and it took me to a theta level, and it was wonderful, but I never had instructions, even if I went to different sun dances with the chaptos to
Yes.
with for some dances with the chactos, and
Yes.
but that was the closest I beside my ex brother-in-law. He was an Apache shaman, pipe carrier,
Wow.
and some dancer, of course. And that's how that's when I started waking up a little bit more of the knowledge
Yes.
that I have. Is like I understand rituals because of
Yes.
that, but more memories start waking up.
Yes. I understand it. So that's part of that process. And I think that we wake up at a pace that we can allow, we can integrate, right? And I had a thing, it's interesting because of my upbringing. I think I was very intimidated by whatever it meant to be a shaman, but also rituals. I didn't want to do them. I didn't want to participate because I associated it with dogma and religion, and I love my upbringing. I'm grateful for it, but I didn't. I it really took time for me to make the connection in an authentic way, and that's what I mean. Like, I would do what my teachers did and learn, but now I've created my own medicine path, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes, you do. I had the same issue with rituals. Like, no, I hate rules. I don't want to do
Yeah,
rules.
same. I do.
But then
I
I
want to do
realized,
the
like,
rules.
I am doing them either way. Like, okay, I'm not following
It's right.
them. And you listen, now you're gonna do this, and now you're gonna do that. Now you're gonna do this. And they're telling me how
Exactly.
to do it. I'm doing it either way.
Exactly. It's so true. It's so true. So,
So, how can you tell us a little bit more about when someone is needing a soul retrieval? That I believe the majority of the human beings were traumatized being,
absolutely.
and for just the birth is a trauma, and everybody
And
sees they're here, they're being birthed. So, can you tell us what are the symptoms?
yes,
They're
of soul loss.
this all
So
loss.
soul loss is something that, that's the shamanic term for it, is soul loss. And soul loss is the result of trauma. And trauma, right, can be subjective, right? It's trauma is not always what happened to you, it's how you respond to what happens to you. And so the symptoms of soul loss can be depression, loss of sort of any kind of vitality. It can feel like obsessive thinking. I'll get into that in a moment. It can be lethargy. So the things that we associate, we call in our clinical terms would be like anxiety, depression. That would be a clue to me that I would want to look to see if soul loss has manifested. It's not always the case, but it can be present. It's also when somebody has recurring illness, or an illness that the doctors can't identify, or a chronic condition that just nothing resolves it, nothing treats it, or treatment resistant depression or anxiety can also be symptoms of it. Addiction is absolutely a symptom of soul loss. So addictions, and one of the reasons I said obsessive thinking, that how when we are ruminating, let's say we've had a breakup and it's a bad breakup and we can't stop thinking about what that person said or what that person did, that's a sign that we've lost an aspect of ourselves in that relationship, that we've lost part of ourselves or fragmented, or that individual's holding on to our energy and we need to call it back to ourselves and bring it back. And we can't, it's very strange to me, for some reason, soul energy does not heal spontaneously. It's very rare. Soul parts don't come back spontaneously. I still don't have the answer on why that is, but I've just observed that. I've done over 35,000 soul retrievals in this lifetime so far. That's a lot of souls I've worked with around the world. And I've done it for land. I've done it because you can have soul loss. A house can have soul loss. Land can have soul loss, like where there's been wars, or where, the Trail of Tears in the United States, that would be considered a trail of soul loss, right? Our indigenous people have had soul loss. So I've done them for communities. When the Me Too movement happened, I did a big ceremony in the Detroit area where I reside, for women to come in and receive soul retrievals. We did them in a group ceremonial way. So it's the pain that lingers, that doesn't get resolved easily through traditional means. And in a traditional culture, shamanic culture, soul loss is identified by the shaman within 3 days, and a soul retrieval is done within 3 days of soul loss, of trauma. And in our culture, it's sometimes years, decades before anybody even acknowledges it.
I wonder how many people are in a mental hospital right now
I believe that, right?
and just medicated, or they're gonna see a psychiatrist, just medicated, and in reality, what they just need
Soul
is
retrieval. That's exactly right. And one of the things I love about, like, when I've done the big community soul retrievals, is that in soul retrieval work, traditionally, it wasn't done alone. The whole community participated and supported the shaman and supported the individual or individuals who needed it. And so the community celebrated the return of the soul part and helped that person integrate it. And we do most healing alone. We do most healing without a witness, right? And we have a big belief in that. We're supposed to do it by ourselves. But from the shamanic culture, from the way that I was trained, we're not supposed to do it alone. We're meant to be embraced in our community and supported through the process. So
That's a hard one in this timeline.
it is.
It is, or at least I see it more here in the United States more than in the other countries that I have seen. Because I come
Yes.
to Peru, I live in Mexico, and over there in Latin America, they will understand that part of the community, family,
Yes.
union,
Yes.
more than in the United States.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because part of the United States mindset is rugged individualism. You have to do everything yourself. And in other cultures, it's not even understood. It's like, what are you talking about? You're part of a family. The family's here to help. Yeah.
One of the symptoms that I would like to add, what you mentioned, is the disassociation.
Yes. So dissociation, from my understanding, means soul loss. So what is dissociation? I think at this point, most people have heard of fight, flight, freeze, the response to trauma, right? So when the nervous system gets hijacked because there's some threat, the nervous system takes over our rational mind, right? And it takes over the body and it pumps you with adrenaline. And then you either go into what we would call a fight, a reaction of fight, or you withdraw, which is flight, or you go into freeze. When you go into flight or freeze, or it could be fawn, which that's a whole other thing. But if you go into one of those practices, that flight is like, I've got to get out of here, right? I've got to leave. This is dangerous. I've got to make a run for it. Or freeze, I can't find my words. I can't speak. Both of those are dissociation. Okay. So the fight can also be a form of dissociation, but that's a little bit of a different kind. So the dissociation means I don't feel like I'm in my body. I don't feel connected to my feelings. I don't know how I feel. I can't find the words. I don't know why I didn't speak up for myself. Those are symptoms or ways that we express dissociation in the body. And dissociation means that we've had soul loss.
Yes, another weight also that I would like to add to the list of what Lori said, it was a battle woman. If you were a battle woman, for sure, it takes a lot to rebuild yourself because you're going to have soul loss in that.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So anybody that's like when you're talking about domestic violence, what you're talking about usually it's generational, right? There's some kind of generational trauma that influences you. And if you've been hit, if you've been harmed in any way, but it's not just physical violence. It can be mental, emotional violence, right? And if you've been put down, and you might not even know that what's happening to you is soul loss. And soul loss can happen in an event, but it can happen over time, right? Repeated abuse, right? Repeated neglect. Yes.
Simply the gaslighting part. The gaslighting is
Yes.
so terrible because they're telling you you're crazy in a way until you start believing that you are.
That's right.
Or you're not smart enough or things like that, and until you start believing it.
That's right. So when you've been gaslit means that somebody is not just invalidating your reality, they're telling you there's a different reality, right? And they're trying to convince you. And if you've had soul loss, you're far more susceptible to it. And so it preys upon soul loss, that kind of behavior, that kind of dynamic. And the thing is that soul loss is actually, dissociation is a way we protect our soul. So from a shamanic perspective, at least the way I was trained, when you have soul loss, it's the wisdom of the soul saying, I'm removing myself from this trauma so I can protect my soul's energy, right? And so I won't, so I absorb the trauma, and then the whole part of me won't, die in this situation, or, be annihilated from this experience. And so that's why it's a kind of a protective measure, and it's the wisdom of the nervous system, and the soul energy trying to protect you, but then it needs help to come back.
I wonder right now, when you were saying that, of course, you have heard about the walk-ins.
Yes, that's when
And
a walk-in can come in. Walk-ins only can come in if there's been tremendous soul loss. Yes. Or a trauma at a time of soul loss. That's why shamans did them very quickly. First is so that the person wouldn't suffer, and then they don't adapt. But if soul loss goes on for a long period of time, then a walk-in can, it's not that common. You bring up things that very few people speak of, but yeah, that's right. That's when walk-ins come in. So what is a walk-in? Is a spirit that steps in because there's an opportunity to inhabit that body.
it's an empty space,
It's empty space, right? Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's what it looks like. So it's like, oh, I get to be there. And so that's why when we heal, the thing that I loved about when I had my soul retrieval many years ago, it was like I was like back. I thought, oh my gosh, all this time I've been working in therapy and doing all the things that I needed to do to heal. And I literally felt like, oh my gosh, this is what it's like to be here. I'm back. I'm all in my body. And it was an amazing experience. I could not articulate it, put words to it very well, but it was like I could finally feel myself, be myself, and act on my own behalf. I couldn't leave a dysfunctional situation prior to my soul retrieval. But once I had it, it was like, now I could stand up for myself.
Yes, I did had one with my beautiful teacher from New Zealand that I adore her. That was the first time I received it, and it was since I was 3 years old that I lost part of my soul, and they came back, and it was like, oh my gosh, like now I understand bigger concepts, and I understand why people reacted with me, how they reacted, and so forth, and I have more compassion even for them.
Perfect. Yeah,
And
that's beautiful.
it is very important that people notice those kind of things. So, because the majority, we have parts of our soul that
That's
they
right.
have left for any reasons. I was a battle woman, so I know that one. It took me
That's great.
years to actually recuperate from that one.
Yes. I'm so sorry, Monica, that you went through that. I've also had very significant trauma in my life, and it took a long time for me to recover and heal from it too. And soul retrieval has been a very vital part of that, and having other supportive women, and and I do think we've got to take the shame out of reaching out for help. And one of the other things I'm going to say, I'm grateful that I have a background as a psychotherapist, because I've tried to help understand how can I say this, integrate soul retrieval into the Western mind, into the Western consciousness. So in my community, psychiatrists, doctors, I've had, and other psychologists refer their clients to me. I'm so grateful for it, for soul retrieval, so that they can be helped in their healing path. And I've seen it make a huge difference when someone integrates it into their treatment, into their approach to healing.
Yes.
It's really profound.
And honestly, it is faster.
It's so much faster. It's like, that's what's so amazing. And it isn't a spiritual bypass. Let me be very careful. When we say that it's faster, for anybody who's listening, it doesn't mean it's a bypass. It's fascinating that you can bring the energy back and then work through the issue so much more succinctly without having to relive the suffering.
Yes. Yes. I love that.
Me too.
So Lori, you're doing, you're going to have a manifesting meditation in January. Please
Correct. And
tell us about it.
January 1st, I always do every year. I've been doing it now for several years. I do a manifesting webinar where we go together and we work in the Akashic realm to supercharge our year. So I bring everybody through the light into helping create the life that they want for the year. And then for people that want ongoing support, that's available too. But it's when is it? On January 1st at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And I just love doing it. It's really uplifting and empowering and just a beautiful way to start your new year. So
I will be posting the links for that so you can register under this video, so like that anyone can register in there, because I believe that's something that is very necessary. What are
yes,
your intentions on the next year? How
yes,
do you want
exactly.
to start the next year? This is important.
That's right. And the way that we work with the energy and the helping spirits, it really amplifies it so that it makes it easier for you to create it, right? Which is really beautiful. And then I also am doing meditation for peace that is I call it a circle for peace because of conflicts that are happening in the world, particularly the one in the Middle East right now. I have a lot of people in my community who have wanted support, and so we connected last week. We're going to connect again on the 12th of December. And we really just get together to focus on peace, to radiate peace. There's some fascinating research that shows that when two or more of us get together in that higher consciousness, we support shifting the quantum field. And that's my intention, is to bring as much peace into the world as we can. So
I'm going to be sharing also that link so you guys can register, because yes, and that day is the day of Tonantzin,
yes.
December 12th.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
That's why I was trying to finish my painting with her. I was
Oh, I love
finally,
that.
I was,
Beautiful. I love your art.
thank you. Well, Lori, do you have something else that you would like to say before we close down this interview for today?
Well,
Because I want to bring her back.
yes, well, I'd be delighted to come back anytime. I'm just thrilled and honored to be with you and to share about this. I feel so strongly that there's reasons why there's so many of us walking in this world with this intuitive awakening. And if anybody's suffering, if it resonates with you that soul retrieval would be helpful, find, you can look on my website, but find a local practitioner that has a really sound, grounded training and reputation that you can work with, because you deserve to be free from that suffering. And soul retrieval is a deep healing practice. It's safe. In the right hands, it's safe. Sandra Ingerman has a really nice list of soul retrieval practitioners in the world. And so I just want to encourage you to know that you can receive support and healing in a way that kind of transcends time and space and allows you to move more speedily in the world with health and joy and freedom and a sense of peace, which we all deserve. And thank you, Monica, for having me here today.
It's been really my pleasure, Lori. Thank you so much, and
It's
thank you
my
for you for listening to us. And this interview serve you, please share it. You might find someone else that you will be interested in this, because they might be having might be needing a soul retrieval too.
That's right.
So the links are gonna be in the comments below. Thank you so much. Thank you for being in Soul Talk and Soulology. Thank you so much.